What if one of the most agonizing stories of suffering in the Bible began not with a sudden tragedy, but with a chilling conversation in the heavenly courts? Imagine a dialogue between the creator of the universe and his ancient adversary, a discussion that set in motion events that would test a man's faith to its absolute limits. Have you ever wondered why bad things happen to good people? Why a loving, all-powerful God would allow such devastating pain? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most profound and often misunderstood encounters in all of Scripture, the divine conversation between God and Satan that precedes the trials of Job. This isn't just an ancient story, it's a window into the very nature of God's sovereignty, the limits of evil, and the purpose behind our own suffering. We'll explore how this heavenly dialogue reveals God's ultimate control, even when it feels like chaos reigns, and how Satan, though powerful, is merely a pawn in a much grander divine plan. Get ready to see suffering and God's role in it in a completely new light. Section: The Heavenly Court, God's challenge to Satan. Our journey begins in a place beyond human comprehension, the heavenly court. Imagine the scene described in Job chapter 1, where the sons of God present themselves before the Lord. Among them, surprisingly, is Satan. This isn't a secret meeting, it's a formal gathering where God, in his absolute sovereignty, allows his adversary to appear. It's here that God initiates the conversation, not Satan. God asks, "From where do you come?" And Satan replies, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." This reveals Satan's constant activity, his relentless search for those he can devour, as Peter reminds us in 1 Peter 5:8. But then God turns the tables with a question that must have stunned the accuser. "Have you considered my servant Job?" This is a critical moment. God isn't asking for information, he's making a declaration. He's highlighting Job's blamelessness and uprightness, his fear of God and turning away from evil. God is essentially challenging Satan, pointing to a man whose devotion is so pure that even the accuser of the brethren cannot find fault. This isn't God tempting Satan, it's God showcasing his handiwork, his faithful servant, and setting the stage for a profound demonstration of faith and sovereignty. What happens next changes everything for Job, and it reveals a crucial truth about God's control. Job 1:6-8, 1 Peter 5:8. Section: Satan's accusation and God's permission. Satan's response to God's challenge is predictable: cynicism and accusation. He argues that Job only serves God because God has blessed him abundantly. "Does Job fear God for no reason?" he sneers. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land." Satan's core argument is that Job's faith is conditional, a transaction based on prosperity. He believes that if God removes the blessings, Job will curse him to his face. And here is where the divine permission comes into play. God, in his infinite wisdom, grants Satan permission to test Job. "Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand." This is a pivotal moment, demonstrating God's absolute sovereignty. Satan, the prince of this world, the god of this age, cannot touch a hair on Job's head without God's explicit consent. He is a limited adversary, operating strictly within the boundaries set by the Almighty. This isn't God causing evil, it's God allowing evil to serve a greater purpose, to prove the authenticity of Job's faith and to silence the accuser. The same pattern repeats in Job chapter 2, where God again presents Job and Satan again accuses, leading to further permission, but with even stricter limits. Only spare his life. Job 1:9, 12, Job 2, 1, 6, section. The sovereignty of suffering, God's good purposes. So why would a loving God allow such suffering? The story of Job, framed by these heavenly conversations, provides profound answers. Firstly, it demonstrates God's absolute sovereignty over all things, even over the forces of evil. Satan is not an equal and opposite force to God. He is a created being, utterly subject to God's will. His power is derived and limited. This understanding is crucial when we face our own trials. It reminds us that no matter how chaotic things seem, God is still on the throne, and He has the final say. Secondly, suffering, when permitted by God, has refining purposes. James 1, 2, 4 tells us to count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Job's suffering wasn't about punishment. It was about purification and proving the genuineness of his faith. Through his ordeal, Job's understanding of God deepened, moving from hearing about God to seeing Him. Job 42, 5. This aligns with Romans 8:28, which assures us that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose. God doesn't author evil, but He masterfully redeems it, weaving even the darkest threads of human experience into His tapestry of good. The suffering, though intended for evil by Satan, was used by God to bring about a greater good, both for Job and for all who would read his story. James 1, 2, 4, Romans 8, 28, Job 42, 5. Section: Our Adversary and God's Ultimate Victory. Understanding this untold conversation also clarifies our own spiritual battles. We are not fighting against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces of evil. Ephesians 6:12. Satan, like a roaring lion, seeks whom he may devour. 1 Peter 5:8. And his strategy often involves accusation and attempts to undermine our faith, just as he did with Job. He wants us to believe that God is either not good or not powerful enough to help us in our suffering. He wants us to curse God and give up. But the story of Job, and indeed the entire biblical narrative, assures us of God's ultimate victory. John 10:10 reminds us that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. While Satan seeks to destroy, God's purpose is always life and flourishing. Job's story is a powerful testament that even when Satan is allowed to inflict immense pain, God's plan cannot be thwarted. His goodness and sovereignty remain. The conversation in heaven wasn't a moment of weakness for God, but a demonstration of His unwavering control and His profound trust in His servant Job. It reminds us that our trials, though painful, are ultimately under the watchful eye of a loving God who promises to see us through and bring good from them. Ephesians 6:12, 1 Peter 5:8, John 10:10. The untold conversation between God and Satan before Job's ordeal isn't just a fascinating biblical detail. It's a foundational truth for understanding suffering. It teaches us that God is absolutely sovereign, even over the darkest forces of evil. Satan is a limited adversary, operating only within God's permission, and God uses even his evil intentions for His own wise and good purposes. When you face trials, remember this heavenly dialogue. Remember that your pain is not random, nor is it beyond God's control. He is refining your faith, demonstrating His glory, and working all things together for your ultimate good. Your suffering, like Job's, can become a powerful testimony to God's faithfulness and your unwavering trust in Him. Embrace the refining fire, knowing that the Master Potter is at work. What truth about God's sovereignty and suffering resonated most with you today? Share your thoughts or a prayer request in the comments below. If this message brought you hope, please hit the like button, subscribe to Eternal Truths for more biblical insights, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it.